You say, well, I haven't been the right kind of a husband and I haven't been the right kind of a father. What am I going to do? You're going to let Christ into your heart. You're going to ask Him to forgive your sin and come into your life and make you the right kind of a husband and the right kind of a father. Showtime! Woo! Woo!
Oh crap, we're back. This is based on my chapter "Oh crap" in my book.
I was wondering if you're going to allude to that or just let it be.
Yeah.
Oh crap! What's the subtitle there, though? What's the
Fighting for control.
Okay?
You know, us as men, man, we have this. I don't think we realize it, especially me. I didn't realize it until later in my life, but how I try to keep things in my control.
I find it hard to believe because I know his wife, Amanda, and I just find it hard that she never told you, "Hey,
No.
you chose not to hear that. Like, you're a control freak. You can't control everything."
I don't know. Maybe she did. I'm not sure, but I don't recall it. I don't. So
I mean, I fall in the same boat, and you know, when you know the best way and you know better than everybody around you, you got to take control sometimes. And I say that jokingly, but that's what you're saying to everyone around you when you do that, and I do it too. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of that, and if I look at it that way, it's not humorous. It's sad. It's like, man, you know, the people around me, whether it be at work or whether it be in my personal life, like they have a lot to offer. They have a lot to offer and to bring to the table.
wisdom.
And I'm taking that away if I'm taking control all the time. Now, there's other situations where people are happy to let you take control because they don't want to deal with it. They just want to, you know, reap the benefits, you know, the group project that.
You ever met those people that ask for advice, but then when you start to give it, they're really not listening to it?
My kids ask me, "What is this?" And I tell them, I say, "That's a foosball table." And they go, "Nope, it's a pool table." What are you asking me for?
What'd you ask
Ask
for?
me questions, and then tell me, "Nope."
Well, I try to surround myself with wise people, and I'll go to them and I'll try to ask them a question, and what would you do in this situation? But a lot of times it's like, I really
You're not. You want somebody to co-sign what you're thinking, right? Or if they're not aligning, like, oh, they have no clue what they're talking about. But it's a prideful thing. It's back to pride, and I think we oftentimes when we're talking about sin or talking about mistakes, even it starts with that. It starts with that pride thing, and it's very prideful to think that I know best all the time, especially when we're talking about dealing with issues that are clearly beyond our control, things we should be turning over.
Oh, absolutely. So this episode is going to be about fighting for control, and kind of starting out with just, we diving right into it, but starts with a question. What do we as men battle, with God over? And control is a big one.
Absolutely.
So what? To me, I think control is probably a symptom of pride. Being prideful. You said that earlier. So, I've never been. I didn't think I was prideful. And I was later in my life until God kind of showed me that, showed me a little bit of pride in my life, or some things that I tried to hold control of. So, we met when I know you came into the group. What, 2018? 2018 when you came to our small group. So. Not long after Stephen come into our group, I had like an ATV accident, and Stephen, we were talking about it before the podcast.
There's nothing to smile about.
No,
it was serious.
It was a serious thing. Look at it and die. But we had this ATV accident, and here I am riding around on a scooter after that for like 6 months. But I tell a story about that in the chapter "Oh Crap," and the reason I think it's important to even talk about that on this podcast is because of what that story kind of taught me in my life. And just to kind of give you a very synopsis of the whole thing. It was on December 30th, 2019. Remember the day, so celebrated every year. But I was getting ready to go hunting. My son Colin had come to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to go hunting." He was 15 at the time. We hadn't really hunted much that year. I'd been hunting, but he had not. But he come to me and he said, "Hey, Dad, I want to go hunting." So we loaded up everything the night before. I was getting ready for going this hunting trip. I threw the ATV in the back of my truck, loaded everything into the truck, getting ready to go. So next morning we're going to get up at 5:30 or so and take off to get in the woods. Well, that night, man, it just started monsoon and raining, and I'm pretty sure I probably woke up from the rain. But every time I wake up in the night, a lot of times I'll stop and just say a prayer, and I feel like if God woke me up for some reason, that He wants me to pray about something. So
He wants you to talk to him. Just holler at me.
yeah, and like I said, it's not like I get into some in-depth prayer with my father, and I probably put him on hold a lot of times because I probably start to pray and fall back asleep. I'm not sure. But anyway, that night I'd woke up and I was about 2 hours before I needed to get up to go hunting. Said a little prayer and I said, Lord, just keep me and my son safe. Let us have a good hunting trip. And so we took off, man. We took off 5:30 that morning. Alarm clock goes off. I'm up. He's up. Jump in the truck. Take off to the hunting land. And the land we were hunting hadn't really been hunted a lot that year. So I had hunted it a few days before that, so I kind of knew, where we were going. I'd already set our spot and stuff. But since it had all that rain that had come in, it actually flooded out some of the trails that we would normally ride on. So as I'm riding along, I'm on the ATV. Colin's sitting behind me. I'm getting animated here, hitting my microphone. Colin's sitting behind me, and guns are on the front. Everything's loaded up. We're riding along. I get to the trail. I can clearly see that it's flooded out, so I have to kind of go around it, and I'm riding in some really tall grass. Well, I knew to my right there was a river, and one side you got the trail's not, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 feet wide. One side there was a fenced-in area. On the other side there was a river, so I'm kind of on the river side.
And it's still pretty dark?
It's completely dark. You can't see nothing. So since I'm going through some tall grass, ATV lights are hitting just the grass in front. I can only see what's in front of me.
Yeah.
And man, here I am trucking along, thinking about getting to our spot, and all of a sudden it happens. I hit the embankment and the river was below us, so it was like 10 feet drop off into the river, and it was just instant, man. I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time to react. All I could holler was, "Oh crap!"
Yeah.
And when it happened, I mean, like I said, the full lunge forward, threw Colin way over my head, off into the river, and Colin had no clue it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
on the back.
Yeah.
Trusting you, trusting Daddy.
Trusting Dad.
Yeah, man.
And so had no clue that this was coming up. So it throws him over my shoulders, off into this river. I end up going down, I'm kind of holding on to the ATV, and the ATV twists up under me. My boot gets caught into the grips on the ATV, and when it does, it just snaps my leg.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt my leg break in the air. I finally go over the handlebars.
And the title of this is Just Oh Crap.
Just Oh Crap.
Okay.
And I hit the river, and when I hit the river, I knew the ATV was coming. I kind of pushed it off of myself, and I'm in freezing cold water. I mean, we're December 30th, man.
Yeah.
This river's, one, it's roaring because of the rain the night before, but two, it's freezing. I mean, so I'm in this freezing cold water. Luckily, the freezing cold water kept me from feeling my leg, because I could feel my leg just dangling. It snapped it completely in two. So as soon as I hit, man, I just remember, screaming for Colin, where are you? And then I hear him, coming up out of the water and gasping for breath. And
he had no clue what
trying to grab to him and trying to pull him to me. And as I got him to me, I was trying to explain to him what happened. Hey, Dad went over this embankment, threw us off, and just kept apologizing. I'm sorry.
How was he? Was he freaking out or just quiet or
I think
scared?
I think he was scared.
Yeah.
Just scared to death. And I told him, I said, look, we got to climb back up this hill. Fuller's sitting in the middle of the river. No clue where everything else is at. But I said, we got to climb back up this hill. And I told him, I said, my leg's broken. So I can tell it's broken. So this thing is pure mud, trying to go up the side of this hill. And here I am with a broke leg just dangling behind me. So finally get top of the hill and get our composure. And my brother-in-law did know we were at the time. So, but I don't know that he knew that we were hunting that morning. So I did try to call, just went to voicemail. My wife did not.
It's 5:30 in the morning,
Yeah,
Getting too many
6 by
people.
this time maybe. But yeah, I'm like, Colin, I got to either hop out of here or crawl out of here. And that's what I did, man. I started, I tried to hop. So I, got up on his shoulders and I tried to hop. But when you're hopping, I mean, my legs just dangling all over the place, pain.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not in the cold river no more, so the pain in my leg is just killing me. Plus, if you look down just and seeing your leg flop around, it makes you nauseous. But this is happening, and so finally I'm like, look, I just got to crawl. And I crawled. We were probably between a quarter and half mile off in the woods to the road. And
luckily,
like I said,
luckily it was just that.
Colin had just turned 15, had his permit.
Yeah.
So he hadn't been driving long. So I'm like, when we get to the road, you go get the truck, come back and pick me up. And
he had to save the day.
yeah, he did. But I crawled out. Took me, man, I don't know, probably an hour.
Really?
Yeah, just to crawl out of that place. But it gave me a lot of time to reflect.
Is that what you were doing?
And as I'm crawling out of this, out of this place, I'm stopping. Sometimes because I'm pain, and luckily when I was crawling, my foot kind of stayed in place, so it wasn't too bad. But man, it gave me time to reflect on what just happened and what could have happened.
What could have happened? Yeah.
And we finally did make it to the truck. Colin he went and got my truck and come pick me up on the side of the road. Finally got in touch with my brother-in-law. He kind of comes by and checks on us, and I told him to go get our four-wheel ride to the river. So he calls my dad, goes does that. But we head to my house and get to my house, and Colin's got to go in and wake his mom up and say, "Hey, Dad." So again, she's 6:30 in the morning now, I guess. So he goes in and wakes her up and says, "Mom, Dad's had this accident. We had a hunting accident." So immediately I think she thought that, oh, he's been shot.
Yep.
You shot your dad, or something. But he's like, no, he's okay. He's just sitting out in the truck. He's broke his leg. So she comes out. I'm covered in mud, dirt, everything else. I'm like, look, I know I've got to go to the hospital, but you got to clean me up some. So my mom and them came, had to cut my clothes off of me, and and they put a boot on my leg.
I can't go to the hospital looking like this.
Nah.
Man.
Well, I got to go into surgery. I mean,
yeah, you knew it was bad.
I guess I could have went and got a sponge bath.
Yeah.
Missed out.
No, thanks.
So anyway,
not the hunting trip that you planned that day.
No, and the reason I'm telling this story is because I want it to kind of point out, like I said, things that I tried to hold into my control. And after all this happened, they finally get me to the hospital. End up having 2 plates put in my leg. I've got 1 plate with 7 screws on one side, 1 plate with 2 screws on the other side. And I still run. I still do things with it. I can tell it's there. My ankle's a different size than it used to be. It's bigger than the other side. But I started kind of thinking back over the whole thing. And as I was thinking about how this all started, it all started with me getting woke up in the middle of the night with a prayer. And I prayed that. And I said, God, please protect me and my son. And then most people, if I'm telling this story, they're like, well, I guess God didn't hear your prayer. He didn't hear it because you had an accident and went off into a river. Mm-hmm. But man, he heard it. And because
how bad could it have been?
When my dad and them went back to go get, my brother-in-law to go get this full ATV out of the river, he looked at my mom and he said they shouldn't be alive.
Yeah.
Because that thing, the river, luckily that rain probably saved us because the river being high.
Yeah.
And having more water into it saved Colin from breaking his neck,
hitting the ground.
But there were sticks and limbs all out of the river. He could have got impaled by something.
Yeah.
He could have. What could have happened too is like when my leg broke. If something happened and he was drowning with a broke leg, how could I even get to him?
Yeah, you'd have been pinned. You wouldn't be able to do anything.
The ATV falling on top of me, it could have broke my neck when it fell on top of me.
Yeah.
But none of that happened.
Right.
None of that happened. The only thing that happened was I got a little broke leg, which they were able to fix up in a couple of hours and send me to the house. So did God answer my prayer? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he also taught me something. As I was crawling out of that place, man, he showed me that I try to hold things into my own control. Mm-hmm. And that day, I was out of control. Mm-hmm. I needed something to come save me, a savior, and man, he did. He gave me time to reflect, and he put me on my face. And
so that's the part of the story I remember. So we had really just met you, and I was like, you came right in the small group the next week with this story on a scooter. And I'm like, man, this guy's dedicated. He's dedicated. This is all he's doing this for a small group to give us a lesson. But
Well, I think
it hit you. It hit you between the eyes.
it hit me.
Yeah.
And it really hit Colin too, because, you know, when we got back and we're sitting in the living room reflecting over this and we're having a conversation, and I started talking about what could have happened.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he just broke down because
Mhm.
he's like, you know, Dad, I didn't realize how lucky we are, to have how God was watching out for us.
Right.
He said, "You're absolutely right. We should not. Somebody should not be here."
Mhm.
And you know, I've never been. Maybe it's because until 40 years old, I had never broken a bone. I mean, have you broken bones?
Yeah, but not a ton.
Not a ton.
Not a ton. I was young.
I know.
No big deal.
I never got hurt. I did stupid stuff, but I always made it through and never really got hurt. So I'm like, I controlled it, right? I wouldn't say I was accident prone. I did some.
Yeah, I'm pretty accident prone. Stitches. You bring up stitches, I always get stitches. Stitches left and right, or glue or something.
Yeah. So I don't think I ever had stitches.
Wow.
None of that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until 40 that
No
I started.
wonder you were feeling like you ran it.
I was
you
the
were,
man.
You were in too much control.
Yeah, I was the man.
I
I'm
got
like,
this.
I got this. I got it all under control. But I was 40 years old. After I turned 40, now everything started going wrong. One, I broke my leg, but then I've had 3 shoulder surgeries. I mean, now
Yeah, I know you've had a shoulder surgery or two for sure.
I was watching a comedian the other day, and the guy was talking about his dad. He said, my dad. He said, he has surgeries all the time. He said he loves it. He loves it. He just loves it.
Well, that's what we talk about too, right?
Yeah.
That's what they talk about.
I was like, I wonder if my kids think that about me, man. My dad, has
One day.
once a year, he loves it.
We're looking forward to the next surgery and telling everybody about it.
It's just that attention. I get that attention from everybody when I'm laid up, I guess.
And a scooter, and you got a little push scooter out
A
of
little
it.
scooter, put a
That's
little
a
bell
win.
on it. Got to ding my little bell as I drove around, and that thing's been a blessing, man. We kept it up in storage. I've let like 4 people borrow that thing since I had my accident. But the accident allowed me to God to get my attention in an area that I didn't realize. So I've always had that thing where I said, I trust you, Lord. I know you got it. But I don't know that I ever did all the way. I kept a little to myself. And I kind of relate to Peter. You know, Peter's another guy, as you see in Scripture, he was hard-headed, when he started out. And that, I think Peter kind of reflects most men. We're all hard-headed. And we all try to, control some of our own, keep control of things.
Absolutely.
And not give it fully over to God. So what do you think some things that you don't give God full control of in your life?
Things I hold on, still try to control. I think the first one for probably a lot of us are things at work, things that we feel like we're supposed to be in control of, or I'm not doing a good job if I'm not in control of. And like I joked about earlier, where you're not trusting people around you or taking the insight and the wisdom of the people around you, and you're trying to take care of everything yourself. And I think that's definitely an example of me just not wanting to relinquish control. But
I'm still guilty of that one, I think. Even when it comes to small group stuff and scheduling things, I'm like, I'm just going to do all this because I know it'll get done right.
It's easier that way. Yeah. And you're robbing somebody else of their ability to shine or not. Maybe they need to fail too, right? Maybe that's part of their story and them getting ready. And at work, we have a certain standard we're supposed to meet, but there are also times where I'm taking on way too much or taking it too personally when things aren't going right, and not turning it over. But other things for just problems at home, family problems or family member problems where I want to have all the answers and I want to fix it and I want to make it right. Where
You don't have all the answers?
I do, but everybody don't want to hear it all the time. But no, and honestly, I feel like I've done pretty good with that because thinking about it right now, there have been some challenges over the past few years where I knew I didn't have that control, and I had to turn that over. But there's other times where that goes completely out of my mind, and I'm trying to do it all.
So y'all did hear it though earlier. If you've got questions, feel free to comment on underneath with any kind of questions you have, because Stephen's got the answer.
Oh, you'll get an answer. You will get an answer.
It will be the answer.
Yeah.
So if you got any problems in your life, Stephen,
And then I will turn comments off after my answer. So.
That way you
No
can't-
rebuttal.
Yeah.
No rebuttal. So give us some questions there. But things at work, finances, children are a big one. Like I get real. I watch my wife get frustrated when they're misbehaving in public or not listening or not reacting the way we would like them to. But I realize what she's really frustrated about is her lack of control over that, and I do it too. And it's just there's things that, you know, there's discipline and things that we're responsible for, and then there's other parts of them that they got to grow and learn and live, and they're little human beings as well. So I cannot beat myself up, and I hate to see her beat herself up over not being able to control some of that.
Well, they're what, 2 and 5?
2 and 5,
2
all the
and
way.
5. So what is your expectations there?
Perfection. Perfection. They need to be better than me. You know, walk in a straight line. I mean, today we go in a place full of toys, and they're not supposed to touch any of them. And these are toys. This is at a school, right? And kids play with. And I'm like, Max, no, don't touch that. Like, even the teacher there was like, "Are you serious right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right." This one took me a long time. Probably till I was, up in age. Traffic, people, other drivers. I can't control them. It's not my responsibility to teach them. I used to feel that in my heart that I had to teach these other people how to drive correctly and signal them and let them know when they were making mistakes on the road. And I don't do that anymore, or I try not to do that anymore. And I'm working on my wife, big time.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. Driving's definitely a thing that I want to have more control over. But I feel, when I like to just kind of reflecting on hearing what you're saying and things that I'm trying to go back in my life, but I'm with you. I still try to control job, maybe not so much anymore, because I feel like I'm out of control when it comes to jobs. Because man, I work in the communications field, and it seems like that is just like a
reactionary.
No, that I've seen people, like VP levels and stuff. You don't know how many people I've worked for in my lifetime. Just rotating door and layoffs, and how that market goes up and down with how communications goes up and down with the market.
Yeah, you've made comments before that. Yeah.
And I used to be like, I've got to control this. I've got to make sure I've got a job and that I'm making this amount of money, and that you control every aspect of that. But man, I don't know that we're meant to do that. Just trust in God, because when we hold on to those controls and stuff like that, we're basically saying, God, I don't trust you.
Yeah, I got this.
I got to do this myself, because either that, or you've got that mindset of why would God be? I know God loves me, but why does He need to be in every little aspect of my life?
Right. And we do that with prayer, right? Do I need to bring this issue to Him? And then when we really talk about His sovereignty and His control over everything, over this conversation, over these thoughts, over that, it's just like, of course I do. Of course I do.
Well, we belittle the relationship that He actually wants from us. My quiet time this morning was Jesus praying for. He prayed yesterday. I read where he prayed for his disciples, and then it said then he's praying for everybody else. And in that, there was one part in there where he's talked about that his desire to God was for his people to be with Him. Mm-hmm. And man, I'm like, God, I remember when Ava Lee got saved.
That's hard. That's hard though.
I remember when Ava Lee got saved. She accepted Jesus Christ in her bedroom, upstairs in her home. And I just remember that day I was actually doing the same quiet time.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember it. And the reason is because that stood out to me. And I dropped to my knees that night and I said, Lord, just to know that you want my daughter to be with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, some goosebumps.
But having those connections, having those little, really seeing how much of a relationship God's calling us to. He wants to be in every aspect of our life. Mm-hmm. And He wants us to trust Him in every aspect of our life. I didn't do that. I was a church going man. I was teaching. I was doing all these things, but I'm like, there's still things that I try to hold on control of.
Right.
And it took God throwing me into a river and breaking my leg and making me, crawl out for half a mile. I'm
glad He did that to you so I could learn.
Yeah.
See, the wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
So I could tell you the story.
Yeah. And I didn't have to do it. Thank you.
Anything else, man? Anything else try to control?
The other big one that I think probably, if everybody's honest, what we all do is we want to control what other people think of us, and we want to control that their perception of us, and sometimes it's none of our business, and we get hurt over that, and people get depressed, anxious, whatever about what people think, and it's really just we don't have control over that. We gotta let that go. And
man, when I first started teaching. That was one thing how Satan used to attack me.
Well, hold you back.
He would say, I would teach a lesson, and the next thing I would walk out, and the lesson could be great, and interaction was great, but I would walk out of that place, get in my car, start driving home. Satan would start attacking, saying, hey, that was no good.
Yep.
You messed that up.
Yeah.
Or
this is not a word. You said this. It's not a word, Chucky. But I mean,
it's funny how you bring that up. So
Again.
apparently that must be something that I do.
no.
Do I make up words?
I don't know. We'll see in the comments.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just thinking like me critiquing myself or stuttering or but I work on letting that go and this podcast is an example of that. I mean, you're teaching, leading a small group.
Well, I do, and what I try to teach others now is, I was probably a little bit younger and I was letting Satan really bother me about teaching, and maybe I had a Sunday that a lot of people didn't show up, and I'm thinking it must be me. Something's wrong with me. Yeah, then they're not showing up to small group, and they're not coming here, so I'm not a good teacher. Maybe I shouldn't be teaching. Whatever it was, I just letting Satan get into my head on those things. But then I really had to go to my knees and start praying about it. And God says, well, who are you doing this for?
Right.
Are you doing this for you?
It goes back to that pride. It really does go back to that pride and that turning on yourself. You're looking at yourself, or you're looking to yourself to fix this, to make it to make it great or whatever. Well, really, what you need to be doing is sharing the gospel. Is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I happen to just thinking about that. I think about the story of Samuel. And I'm forgive me if I don't have this exactly correct, but in the book of Samuel, Samuel is a prophet, and really the people are coming to him and screaming for a king.
Yeah.
And Samuel's like, you don't need a king. You've got God. And so Samuel goes to God and starts complaining about it and says, how dare they? What? Look at them. Look at all. He took it personally, like it was an offense against him that these people were screaming for a king. And God basically says, they're not. This isn't against you. It's against me. Mm-hmm. We turn it against ourselves.
Yeah, because we make it about ourselves.
And we make it about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I did that when I was new in teaching. I made it about, well, if I don't have a lot of people here today, something's wrong with me. Yeah. I did this. I did that. So I had to come to the point. It's like, Lord, this is for you.
Yeah.
Am I going to be perfect? No. But you called me to do this. I'm going to go do it, and I'm going to let you take care of the rest. I'm not going to sit there and worry myself to death. And when I started doing that, man, peace,
freedom,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
Such a peace. But he does that to every single person that he's calling to lead their homes, to lead whatever.
At work, guys. I mean, I do. I think about that, and I see so many really talented, smart individuals that try to do it all, and they don't. What they're doing is they're not trusting the knowledge and the skill set of the people around them, or the wisdom or the experience, because they know it all. And if I catch myself going down that hole, man, I try to really take a step back. But the same thing is true for leading our family or trying to fix problems, whatever they may be.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, leadership has not always been the smartest person, but it is. No. It's trying to surround yourself with people,
and then trusting them, and letting them fail, or letting yourself fail, or letting them have some credit or the credit. That's the real win, is where you could sit back and let your team take the credit for the victory, and then you're still willing to take the credit for the loss if you have to. As a leader.
I mean, going back to Alaska, man, watching us kind of stepping back, watching them take leads.
Yeah.
Man, I took more pride in that than me doing it myself. Yeah. I was like, man, look at them go.
Well, I felt. I mean, that was God working on me, but I felt more fulfilled. Like I keep getting that. It's more of a.
I felt empowered because I empowered them.
It's a question I get in passing, like, tell me about it, or how was it? And I'm going, man, it was incredible. It was more rewarding personally, which is not what it's all about. But it was more rewarding personally than it was the previous year, being a counselor and being on the front lines and working directly with those kids. It was just like I felt that's where God wanted me. And I know it is, because he put the right people in the right place to achieve his will.
The other day I was kind of reflect, how does this, looking at this from a father standpoint, of a father and a son, the field beside our house needed to be bush hogged. And I know how to run a bush hog. My father-in-law's kind of gotten to the point. He's like, I'm getting too old for this. Y'all take this over. You go do the bush hog, and normally he used to just take care of it. So I told Colin was here. I think it was a Saturday, and I said, Colin, come on.
Yeah.
I want you to come get on the bush hog. I want you to go there and bush hog this field. He didn't have no experience on the tractor. Like I said, he didn't. The reason he didn't is because, like I said, my father always took care of it. So I went down there, put him on the tractor, showed him how to drive it.
Yep.
I'm like, go at it.
Yep.
Figure it out. I said, you're going to get more comfortable with it as you do it. And I just sat back and watched him do it.
Yeah. And how empowering is that for him?
Because I wanted him to learn it. Because heck, I'm gonna get to the point too. It's like I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And I'm on the flip side. I'm on the other side of that with the younger kids. It's like how much stuff I run around and do for them because I can do it quicker and faster. Getting dressed, tying shoes, and then am I just stealing that from him? But again, the chance to fail. That's a blessing. A lot of times for a lot of people, I know it has been in my life. I learned way more. And there's 100 quotes out there about learning more from failure than your successes. But if I'm not letting him fail or letting him struggle or get frustrated with putting his shoes on or trying to tie a shoe, then I'm not letting him grow, or I'm not allowing him to grow.
It made me think of the quote, and I think I wrote something on social media about. I took a picture of him bush hogging, but I shared a quote about, and I forgot what book it was in. I read a ton of books, but it was a quote in one of my books I've read, and it was talking about a guy was with his children, and they were painting this fence, and all of a sudden somebody was driving by, and they stopped and they asked the guy, and they said, "Why are you letting your kids paint this fence?" He said, "Wouldn't it be a lot quicker if you just did it yourself?" And the guy says, "I'm not painting a fence. I'm raising children." And
painting a fence.
Exactly.
So many times I'm painting a fence or I'm tying shoes.
Well, I do it myself. I can do it better. I can do it quicker. So why do I want to fool with letting my son go bush hog and having to stop and train him to do it?
And they're at the age, or they've probably been there, where they're going to surprise you. They're going to teach you something. They're going to have a better way or a quicker way. I know you won't admit it, but you're smart boys, man.
Well, what I love is I can one day come home and pull up in my driveway and got this nice freshly cut pasture and I didn't have to do a thing. My boy's like, hey, I got this.
Yeah.
Dad's busy. Dad's doing something else. I'm going to take care of this for him.
Yeah, but that'll wear off.
Well, but he won't have an excuse.
Yeah.
I taught you how to do it. But, that's just prime examples of, you talk about work, trying to take care of things yourself at work, it makes me better when I empower other people. I started doing this. Somebody at work brought this up, and I think it's called the six something of genius. Six ways of genius. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but it was just talking about the different geniuses that each person has, and we don't all have all six. You all have one, I'll have one, and we need to figure out what those are and work together to really accomplish. We all have the same goal, right?
Yeah.
To be successful and make our company that we work for profitable, and
right.
If they're profitable, we're profitable, right? They look good, we look good. So we all have the same goal. It's not a competition.
Yeah, but that crabs in a bucket thing happens too, man. Like if I'm not winning, I'm losing, or if he's winning, I'm losing. Like just.
Man, we probably need to do a separate podcast on this, but man, I even see that in our Christian faith that in leadership, right? Where say you say, "Oh, hey Chucky, man, I feel like God's calling me to go lead a small group."
Right.
And you start leading a small group, and all of a sudden you see that there's a competition going on. What is that?
I know. I see it in let's take it down a level, just in our discussions, right? And in a small group setting, or we all want to have the answer, like we joked about earlier, or the bold statement, or be the smartest one in the room, when that's not what we all need or what we're all looking for. We just got to be real and talk about how God's working in our life, or how God touched me on this subject or whatever. And everybody's going to have something different, but this person might be saying something that's really speaking to somebody. And if I'm dominating that conversation, that blessing's being missed.
And we're probably getting a little off topic here on some of this, but man, I think it's an important discussion because we should not be in competition with each other. We should, man. When I birth the class, or have people that follow me that go and teach other things, man, I just want to pray for them and encourage them, because I know I've been in that spot. I know how it feels. Man, and we should do that in everything. You know, if we teach somebody else how to do something, we don't become we're not competing with them after that. We're
Yeah, you got to go. I mean, what was the point? It was to see the fruit, right? Or
Fruit.
to grow the kingdom, and here it is in his glory, in his perfect, no mistakes, yes, all that, but that's what you did it for.
And those little texts and those little things of encouragement along the way, and you know, hey, if you ever need to talk, if you need to sit down with each other through
Right.
that, that's
Right.
so important, so important.
And it's the same thing at work. Same thing at work. Same thing with your kids is you know, teach them how to fish and teach them this and teach them that and watch them grow and run with it and outdo you hopefully one day.
So let's take a quick little kind of getting back to control. Let's take
Yeah,
a
we
quick
got off topic.
Let's take a
Sorry.
little quick look at Peter real quick, and this comes from Matthew 16, and this is where Jesus is predicting his death, right? So in Matthew 16, verses 21 through, what does it go to, 27?
Yeah, 28.
You know, Jesus is sitting there with his disciples, and he's explaining that he must suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed on the third day and raised to life. Verse 22. This one's one that really kind of grabs you. It says, Peter took him to the side and began to rebuke him.
Do you think Peter grabbed his ear and was like, "Come here,
Man,
let me
I'm
holler at
like,
you"?
who do you think you are?
I think maybe we're
to
quite
pull.
sure yet.
The Savior, you know,
Mhm.
God, to the side and say, I need to rebuke you for a little bit.
Mhm.
You know, I need to say, you know, this.
All
this
these
isn't-
things you say will and need and must happen. This will never happen to you.
Yeah. He says, never, Lord, he said, this shall never happen to you. And I'm reading from NIV.
Yeah, but I can relate with him too, man. Like, I'm not gonna let this happen. But that's just me not fully understanding my small role in this and his ultimate power and how this has to happen. These things have to happen. This prophecy has to be fulfilled just like this for it all to mean anything.
And that's Jesus. You know, how does Jesus respond to him?
Yeah, get away. What does he say? I forgot. Get away from me, Satan.
Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me,
Get
Satan.
behind me, Satan. I got
You
that
are a
right.
stumbling block to me.
Different translation.
Man, that's kind of hurtful, man. You know, he's like Peter, you know, the savior of the world just called you Satan.
Well, I mean, think about if this really would have played out and he would have stopped all this from happening and stopped him from dying. Yeah, that's the most. Satan would have been sitting in his lazy boy, loving it. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
But
so
what
makes sense.
But what you see from here is Peter, he had good intentions, right?
Right.
He did. He's like, Lord, I love you, and I'm here to protect you.
Right.
You know, so I'm not going to allow this to happen to you. But you know, God sees things that we don't see,
Right.
and I cannot tell you exactly why that ATV accident happened.
Right.
All I can tell you is that what I learned from it.
Mhm.
You know, so God allowed it to happen for a reason, to get my attention, and he got my attention. And there's so many things that I read in Scripture. You know, we're talking about Peter here. I was talking to Stephen earlier about a story about Elijah. Same thing. You read this story of Elijah, and this is from Kings, 1 Kings 17, 7 through 24. Elijah is told by God to go visit this widow in this city and says, hey, when you get to her, she's going to provide you with food. So Elijah does what God says. He goes to this widow and he says, hey, I'm here. Can you make me some bread, basically? And the widow's like, I don't got no food. I don't have any food at all. And he's like, I got a little bit of flour at the house. I'm going to go make me and my son some food, and we're going to eat it and we're going to die. That's how little food we got. So, you know, when this happens, Elijah goes to, tells her, he says, look, just go home. Quit worrying about all that. Just go home. Make the bread. When you make it, give me some first, and you will never run out.
It makes perfect sense.
The flour, the oil will never run out. You'll have
Right.
it until the rains come back, right? Because they were going through a drought at the time. So, man, she does what Elijah says, comes back, brings him, and that's what happens. The food never runs out. She's able to feed Elijah, feed her family. Everything's fine. In the midst of this story, it just stops kind of right there. It tells that, ends. Next thing you hear is this little boy gets really sick and he dies. And I'm trying to make sense of it. I read it in here, and it said sometime later the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. He said, the woman said to Elijah, what do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son? Give me your son, Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room, and began staying with him, and laid on him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, have you brought tragedy on this widow that I'm staying with by causing her son to die? Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him. The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. So I see this whole story unfolding where Elijah does what God tells him to do. Mm-hmm. He gets there, the food is provided just like God said, and then this tragedy strikes out of nowhere. It just seems out of place. Right. Why did that happen? I don't understand. What am I supposed to learn from this? The only thing I can say is that when it happened, I see where Elijah lays across this boy, hits his knees, and he cries out to God.
Mm-hmm. Leaned in.
I can only think that in reading that God says, maybe Elijah had pulled away from God a little bit, mm-hmm. and God says, I need you back here with me. Mm-hmm. I need you to cry out to me. I want to hear your voice. I want you to be close to me. So he allowed that to happen for him to come back to him. So when I look at that my ATV accident, I'm the same thing. Yeah. What did it do to me? It put me on my knees for half a mile as I crawled out of the woods, crying out to my Father in thanksgiving.
Right.
And
it's beautiful. You recognize that in the moment. Not a year later or 2 years later. You recognize it in the moment.
Yeah. My son thought something was wrong with me because he's like, why are you praising God?
Might be a little concussed.
Yeah. He's like, man, that ATV knocked my dad out. He is praising God on his knees, crawling out of the woods with a broke leg.
Yeah, but that's mature. I mean, that's, man, being able to see it and realize it right then. I mean, I talk about in hindsight, right? Looking years back and going, man, God was there, or God pulled me through, or God put me there to teach me this. Like I can see it way later on, but to be able to see it right in the middle of it. And yeah, it's.
And we talked about
how often are we not? We're not leaning on Him. We're not relying on Him enough.
And we talked about some of this in the pain episode, but to even get to that, we've got to relinquish control and trust God. That when we're going to that trust piece is what me as a man I hold on to.
Yeah.
And it's in my work. It's in taking care of things in my house.
Right.
I got this. I don't need you to do it. And it affects relationships with our spouses. I mean, how often do you maybe you're doing something that you think the spouse should be doing, but at the same time you're sitting there grumbling about it,
mm-hmm.
And you got this animosity that's building up within you, and it causes separation in your.
Never happens. Absolutely.
So if I'm Peter, going back to the Peter story, and Peter was hard headed just like all the other men, and what. And the thing is even after Peter gets called Satan, and this is in Matthew 16. In Matthew 26, it happens again. Okay? In Matthew 26, this is actually, let me flip over to it. This is where Jesus is, basically, telling him that, hey, this is what's fixing to happen. And he says, it says Jesus predicts Peter's denial. This is where, they just had the Lord's Supper, the Last Supper, and Jesus is telling them again, hey, this is what's fixing to happen. And he said, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. Peter replied, even if all fall away on account of you, I never will.
Mm-hmm.
Truly I tell you, Jesus answered, this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And we know what happened.
Yeah.
We know what happened, right?
Yep.
So even though after he, Jesus had already rebuked him before, called him Satan, says, get behind me, these things are going to happen, he's still fighting against it.
Right.
And this is just a short time later. And man, I'm Peter. I'm so hard-headed.
Right.
I was 40 years old before God got my attention and said, you're still holding on to control of things.
Right.
You've not given full control over me. And I didn't even realize it was happening. It never even occurred to me. But now that I can reflect and look over my life, I see other aspects of it where I still do it.
Yeah. Now you put it on a podcast, and now you got to work on it.
That's right.
Accountability.
So my hope is that you can definitely relate to something we were talking about here. But I want to end with this because I think this is where Jesus shows us exactly what we should do in a situation. Right. So jump into Matthew 26:39. Now, this is where Jesus is in the garden, and he's preparing, he's praying, and but it says in Matthew 26 verse 39, it says, going a little farther, he fell on his face to the ground and he prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet, not as I will, but as you will. He shows us exactly what we should do. Does it mean that we're going to like the situation? I can't sit there and say, man, I'm celebrating this ATV accident.
Yeah.
It hurt my leg, man.
Yeah.
It was painful. It was painful losing my son for a minute. And that's something we ain't even talked about, how that felt.
Yeah.
It wasn't all that. When I went over that river and was sitting on that embankment, and all of a sudden I didn't know where my son was, and I couldn't hear him because he was underwater, there's a fear that came over me like never before. Like never before. Now, I'm going to tell you, it even made me realize what I cost. Because I started thinking about what God did when Jesus was on that cross. And when Jesus took on our sin, that God could no longer look upon him.
Yeah, he allowed that.
He lost sight of
For
his
us.
son for a little bit for us.
For us.
We will never realize the price that was paid for us on that cross. Losing his son and breaking that connection because he couldn't be a part of the sin that sat on his son, that took on that sin for me. In that river. And again, I'm not comparing these apples to apples.
No.
But I got a glimpse of losing sight of my son for a minute.
Yeah.
And the heartache and heartbreak it caused me. We'll never fathom the price. We'll never fathom the price. And I'll tell you, that accident showed me that too. But Jesus absolutely shows us what we can do. Yes, you may go through something may happen that you can't explain. You may be trying to control all these different aspects in your job and in your home and everything else. But guess what? We've got to relinquish control to our Savior. We've got to relinquish control to God because He controls all things. Tomorrow, I could lose my job. I could lose everything else. And guess what? My livelihood and stuff is completely, and no fault of my own, right? No fault of my own. I did everything right. Got an education, did this, did that. Because of no fault of my own, I'm out of work and can't pay for something I need to pay for, and I'll throw my hands up in the air and either I'm going to throw myself a pity party or I'm going to say, Father, I trust you.
Yep. And you wouldn't have been able to write a book without this ATV accident. This was good. I didn't look at it until we had this conversation. I didn't look at all that, especially with the losing Colin like that even if it was only for a moment. That's big.
Yeah. So I hope,
eye-opening.
Guys, if you enjoy what we're talking about, I got a huge recommendation. Read the book. Because I think it definitely is. When you write it down, it's a lot more eloquent than me maybe sitting here telling the story live. But man, I just reflecting on the story. Absolutely, read the book and got some challenge questions behind each chapter, challenging you. What are some things that you try to control in your life? And not only that, do have a 14-week discipleship study that I've just finished.
Yep.
And will be coming out and be published here soon. So my hope is that that will, be something that a lot of men's groups pick up and start doing the 14-week discipleship study. It is a companion book to my book. So, if you read the book, it kind of adds to it. Tons of questions, quiet times, daily quiet times that go with it. It is a discipleship study. It is going to show you how to do a one-on-one discipleship or a one-on-a-group discipleship.
Cool.
And my hope is that when you're done with that you can, every man that goes through that will in turn do it with somebody else. We need more men discipling. And when God called us to go out and make disciples, He wasn't saying, hey, if you got time. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a commandment. We all should be out, making disciples, being disciples.
And we do have time, and we do have opportunities.
And man, when you do, just the fruit, the peace, the comfort, knowing that you're doing what God's called you to do, and just watching another brother, in Christ grow in front of you because you did what He called you to do is incredible. So, be looking for that. Be coming out. I'll be advertising it more. You guys are my biggest. When it comes to getting advertising out and stuff like that, I don't do a lot of advertising. One, because I ain't got the money to do it. Two, it's you. Giving reviews. And conversating. doing likes, doing shares, follows.
Yep.
Those things on social media are huge and help get the word out. And again, it's not for my glory, it's for his glory. And all I want to do is help other men grow closer to Christ. So thanks for joining. You are the man.
You're the man.